Wherapy. Therapy wherever, whenever.
Welcome to Coffee with a Therapist, the podcast where you and myself, Philip Andersson, psychotherapist and the founder of Wherapy, explore the world of mental health one sip at a time. So grab a cup of coffee and join me as I delve into the complexities of the human psyche and explain how depression and anxiety works. With my insight and practical tips, I hope this podcast will help you to become the best version of yourself and to perhaps become your very own therapist. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Coffee with a Therapist. So, welcome to this week's episode. I've got my Moomin mug with me here again with some freshly brewed coffee, and I'm ready to talk about mixed feelings in relationships. And by that, I'm not going to cover the kind of initial courting phase of a relationship, the initial few dates, or if you're in high school, whatever, the initial will they, won't they get together aspect of a relationship. I'm gonna more focus on being in a long-term relationship and having mixed feelings for your partner. And this is something that I think many people will relate to. And at the very end of the podcast, I will give kind of a short, brief insight on how I think you should approach those mixed feelings. And then I will also finish, for those of you who listen to my podcast frequently will know this, but every week I announce 3 new countries which are going to be a part of my Therapy World Tour. And if you're from any of those 3 countries, you can apply for a free therapy session with me. So I'm going to announce those 3 countries at the very end of the podcast. But let's begin by looking at our expectations when it comes to a relationship. I think that many people, or I'm quite sure that a lot of people, enter the relationship with some thoughts about how that relationship reflects on them. People who have been single for a long period of time, they are not only interested in having a relationship simply because they're interested in the person. They're also kind of interested in being in a relationship because they're interested in liberating themselves from the title as somebody who's always going to be single. And we, on the other hand, we also have people who maybe because they're in a certain phase of their life, in a certain age where society has certain expectations of us, particularly maybe if we're a certain gender. I'm thinking kind of more about women who are approaching or within that kind of age of fertility, and they're approaching, or they're well into that phase and they haven't had kids yet. Then being in a relationship also to them means that they have a chance of having kids. And obviously this isn't something that is kind of genus biased. It could be a man who's feeling like, well, I have to have a relationship because I want to have kids. They might be in their 40s. But the kind of typical example is a woman approaching maybe her 30s or have gone past her 30s and has for a long time thought they want to have kids, they're going to view the relationship different to maybe a guy in a similar age. Yeah, that's a typical example. So we go into relationships with different expectations. Yeah, we don't simply go into relationships thinking, "Oh, this person is amazing." Yeah. So on top of this person, yeah, we lump a lot of our expectations. Yeah. And 1 minute when we're kind of not seeing the fragility of the relationship, or we're not seeing the bad aspects of the other person, yeah, or the worst side of the other person, because we all have good and bad sides, yeah. But when we're not seeing that, we're seeing our expectations being fulfilled. We're seeing, for some of us, we're seeing that society is no longer looking at us as somebody who's unable of being loved. Yeah. For others, they're seeing themselves as somebody who will be a mother or father quite shortly because we're in a relationship. And as the relationship goes on, yeah, we're clinging on to these expectations. Yeah. And then we're also forming a strong bond to the person that we're with. But every now and then, we become maybe acutely aware of the vulnerability that we have. We become acutely aware of the other person's downsides. Yeah, so for the person who, in the first example, the person who is happy to be in a relationship because they're finally feeling like they're capable of being loved, yeah, to have somebody also to have the person that you're in a relationship with being nonchalant towards you, not kind of giving you the respect you deserve, or maybe not taking the relationship as seriously as you would want them to, that causes you to hate them, yeah, momentarily, yeah. So you're jumping, in this case, you're jumping between your expectations, which is giving you the positive, good feelings, and the reality of the person not living up to your expectations, which is giving you the negative feelings. Yeah, it's the same for the person who wants the kids, and then they've been in a relationship for a few years, and whenever the topic of kids comes up, the other person kind of dodges the question. Yeah, there you're also jumping from your expectations giving you the positive feelings, and their the reality not meeting those expectations, yeah, that giving you the negative feelings. So that's one example of having mixed feelings in relationships. Another example that I'm thinking about is also something that within psychodynamic therapy we call splitting. Yeah, and this is a very typical example of this is if you've recently broken up with somebody. Yeah, but I think that it is we can even apply it to being in relationships, in the midst of relationships. And splitting means that we compartmentalize people, yeah, into different boxes. Yeah, so a part of this person is the good person, and a part of this person is the bad person. Yeah, because if we see the person as a whole, we have to realize that the person that we love is also the person that is causing us harm. Yeah, and that thought process is sometimes too hard to bear, and it makes us hurt even more. Yeah, so we find it easier to at one moment hate the person completely, and at another moment love the person entirely. Yeah. And that's a typical kind of love-hate relationship scenario. I think one example would be if you're in a relationship with somebody who's prioritizing their job over their relationship to you. That would be quite easy to hate them one moment when they're always in prioritizing their job, and then loving them those rare moments where you actually do get time together. That's called splitting. So those were two examples, and in the next segment I'm gonna offer one more example. So now for the third and final example that I have for you today in regards to mixed feelings in relationships is transitioning. Yeah, and by that I mean that we're at different stages in our lives, and where one of us is transitioning a little bit earlier than the other person. And this is obviously kind of more clearer to us if we are different ages. So if for example a guy at about maybe 25 is together with a woman who is 30, 31, they're going to be in completely different stages of their lives. And in this scenario, whereas they may truly love each other, the older person is going into a different phase in their life and might have different expectations based on that. They might, as I mentioned in the earlier scenario, they might want to have a couple of children, and the younger person isn't ready for that. The younger person is still in the mindset that they want to live and experience their youth, and they're not really ready for that commitment. And at the same time, they're still in love with each other. They still love each other's personalities, but they don't love the phase of life that the other person is in. I'm trying to think of a different example to give you guys. And I think that one such example could be that teenagers who are just coming out of high school or university, and one of them is more kind of one of them wants to hold on to that high school teenager life, whereas the other one wants to move on with their life and wants to kind of maybe move to the big city, or start this internship, or do this other type of thing. That's a typical example of the other person transitioning into another phase of their life. And that obviously affects the relationship. This person transitioning into becoming that, wanting to move to the big city, start that internship, wanting to get on with their next life, might love the person that they're with, but might not like the fact that he or she wants to stay in the earlier phase of their life for a bit longer. The same goes for people who are kind of reprioritizing their life. And I don't know if this should be a category on its own, but if somebody is going from maybe being that workaholic type to wanting to go and start a family, become the family person, or somebody who has tried to make a lot of money and then wants to reprioritize and wants to focus on something that is giving them a lot of kind of spiritual happiness, or um, kind of moving into being more focused on their hobbies, or more focused on another aspect of their life. And if your partner is not in that phase, or doesn't want to join you in that journey, in that transitioning or reprioritizing, then that can lead to a lot of mixed feelings. As with kind of the very first example of expectations, here we are in love with our partner, but we're not in love with the phase that they are in. And that leads to a lot of mixed feelings. And the splitting that I mentioned just before the break is a typical is a way of us handling that. So and that is the very kind of essence of mixed feelings. It's easier for us to hate a person entirely 1 second, and then love a person entirely another second, rather than feeling those things at the same time. So when it comes to transitioning, we might be very, very frustrated and angry at this person for holding us back, and then we might feel a great sense of sadness because we actually love this person a lot as well. And I think transitioning is quite a reasonable reason for having mixed feelings. It's not, and I think a lot of us think about mixed feelings in the wrong way. That is something that is a sign of a relationship not being right. And that doesn't have to be the case at all. The relationship can be right, and it might just mean that we have to wait for a year or two until that person transitions into the same phase as us. Or that we simply kind of, if we choose to end the relationship, that we understand and accept the fact that this was a person that we loved in a certain time of our lives. And I think that pill can be quite hard to swallow. It can be quite easy to think that this person wasn't for me. This person wasn't my happily ever after. And in thinking that, we disregard the fact that this person was somebody for you at a certain time of your life, when you needed a certain type of person. And if we think that way, we can hold that person closer to our hearts, and feel happy and feel satisfied with our choices. Because with every relationship ending, we end up feeling unsuccessful, that there's something wrong with us. How come this didn't work? And we forget the fact that it did work for a certain period of time. And that the person that we were then needed this relationship. And that might be the same, but in the opposite direction, if we're being broken up with because of mixed feelings. We served a purpose for this person at a certain period of their life, and we did have a happy and successful relationship. But now that relationship has ended, and we're looking at different relationships that serve us now. So mixed feelings, that's something that I wanted to kind of talk about at the very end of this podcast, which I've realized now that we've come to. The mixed feelings, I think we're so hypersensitive towards mixed feelings. Obviously, we should listen to our intuition. If we realize that a person is bad for us, we shouldn't be with them. That's not what I'm saying. But having mixed feelings in the moment for people is something that is completely natural. Yeah, we can be frustrated with somebody but still love them. We can be in a different phase of our lives and still love each other. We can have certain expectations of people and they not meet those expectations but still love them. Yeah, in that example, it is our expectations that is kind of causing the mixed feelings here and is ruining it for us. Yeah, but having mixed feelings is a part of life. And the most important thing is not to make rash decisions based on those mixed feelings. So that is my piece of advice for you. I don't know if that was a cop out or if you're unsatisfied. I hope you're not. I think contemplating, reflecting on the reason for your mixed feelings and realizing that it's psychology, it's in your nature, is a very important thing to do. It could be our expectations versus reality. It can be us being in different phases of our lives. Having mixed feelings, splitting, seeing somebody as either good or bad is a way for us to cope with having different feelings, because having the same feelings, because having the same feelings for the person at the same time is too much for us to bear. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Since we're ending it here, I'm going to announce the 3 countries for this week's Therapy World Tour. And I'm looking at the map over here. I'm looking at Africa, and I'm thinking Nigeria. I'm also looking at the Middle East, a little bit above the Middle East, and I'm thinking about Turkmenistan. I would love to meet somebody from Turkmenistan. And I'm also looking towards Europe, and I'm choosing Romania. So if you're from any of those 3 countries and you want one free therapy session with me, go over to my website, wherapy.com, and find my contact information at the very bottom of that website, and send me an email about yourself. Or if you want to, write in the comments section of this video on YouTube, or go over to my social media. You can just search for Wherapy. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and the like, and just get in contact with us there. So thank you very much for today, and take care of yourself.